don't work.
For the record, Mr. Secretary, then I assume you no longer believe that the flu vaccine is destroying children's brains, that there's zero evidence that the flu vaccine prevents any hospitalizations or any deaths, because today you're here agreeing that the vast majority of kids that died from the flu were people without vaccines, and you're saying that you're now approving vaccines. Okay, it is a cut when it comes to the rural hospitals all over America that are having to close because of the Medicaid cuts, and those are real dollars.
They were closing before I came in here. Now they're not closing.
Let me just ask you, do you realize? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for being here again. For decades, parents in this country were able to send their kids to school without worrying about whether they could come home with a dangerous case of the flu or a dangerous case of the measles, as my colleague from South Carolina is saying. Last year, we saw the largest number of children die from the flu in modern history. Are you familiar with that, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, I am.
And have you told President Trump about that? The last year was the largest childhood death of flu in America, in modern America.
Well, that's one of the reasons that FDA just approved 2 new vaccines for influenza A and influenza B.
Because you would agree that last year was the worst year on record in terms of flu deaths in modern history, not in the old days. Not
right.
In those.
In the old days, we were having hundreds of thousands.
You're right. Of course. Do you agree that 89% of the children who died from flu were unvaccinated?
I don't know the exact number.
That is the exact number, Mr. Kennedy, and it was, I think of interest to a lot of people in America that you took down the communications from HHS on the flu, the importance of getting a vaccine when you first became the secretary. And I just wondered whether you regret having done that. You're now saying that you're approving vaccines for the flu.
I approve lots of vaccines. I've spent $1 billion, authorized $1 billion, developing new vaccines, including a universal flu vaccine.
So are you,
I think last year the flu vaccine had something like a 20% efficacy. So having these single antigen vaccines is not serving the public interest. The Cochrane collaboration said this, they simply don't work.
What you're seeing here is a sharp pivot under pressure. The line of questioning forces a direct contrast between past skepticism and current responsibility. On one side, there's documented data about unvaccinated children making up the majority of flu deaths. On the other, there's hesitation, uncertainty about numbers, followed by broader criticisms of vaccine effectiveness. That tension matters, because when a public official shifts from questioning vaccines to approving them, the obvious question becomes, what changed? Was it the data, the role, or the accountability that comes with being in charge? And more importantly, can the public trust that this shift is consistent and grounded?
For the record, Mr. Secretary, then I assume you no longer believe that the flu vaccine is destroying children's brains, that there's zero evidence that the flu vaccine prevents any hospitalizations or any deaths, because today you're here agreeing that the vast majority of kids that died from the flu were people without vaccines, and you're saying that you're now approving vaccines.
We're making sure that we follow the science, Senator.
Well, I hope you'll follow the science, because that's what put us in the position 30 years ago of essentially having measles declared at an end in the United States of America.
Well, many nations have lost their elimination status, including Canada, the UK, a lot of Europe this year, because of the outbreak, and the outbreak has nothing to do.
I mean, I would hope that I know you said the outbreak has nothing to do with you. That was your answer to Ron Wyden. You're the chair, you're the head of the agency. You're the head of the
agency has no jurisdiction over Canada, Mexico, the UK, Austria.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. We are, I think everybody on this dais believes that the United States of America ought to be leading in these matters. That's why we're so discouraged by your cuts to NIH, because that's going to make it harder for us to lead. That's why we are so discouraged by your cuts to Medicaid that are making it impossible to invest in rural America. That's why
there are no cuts to Medicaid, Senator, as you know. There's no cuts to Medicaid. There's the congressional budget.
That is Mr. Kennedy.
Look at the Congressional Budget Office this week. They say we are increasing Medicaid spending by 47% over 10 years. That's not a cut, except in Washington.
Okay, it is a cut when it comes to the rural hospitals all over America that are having to close because of the Medicaid cuts, and those are real dollars.
They were closing before I came in here. Now they're not closing.
Let me just ask you, do you realize that last year the United States had the highest number of measles cases in 30 years? That the last time we had more than that was before
the whole world did.
Measles.
The whole world did.
Yeah, we were the leader, Mr. Kennedy.
We still are. We have a 92% vaccination rate. We have one of the highest vaccination rates for measles on earth.
So are you taking the position, let me ask you, are you taking the position, as your CDC director has taken, that the measles vaccine is vital to keeping American children healthy in this country? Are you taking that position today? That has not been your position.
That's my position. We promote the measles vaccine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That will be, I hope you will go out to America and promote this. The idea that you have nothing to do with this.
The measles vaccine prevents measles in 97% of the people who take it. I've always said that. That's what the science says.
I would ask you to please underscore it, because there's a reason that we are having these outbreaks, Mr. Chairman, and that is the misinformation that's been propagated. If you would have a change of view, that's excellent. Let's get it out there to the American people.
Senator Langford.
This exchange is revealing not because of one single statement, but because of the pattern it exposes over time. You have a senator building a case step by step, starting with hard outcomes, record-high flu deaths among children, the overwhelming percentage of those children being unvaccinated, and the historical success of vaccination campaigns in reducing diseases like measles. These are not abstract points. They're measurable, real-world consequences tied directly to public health decisions. And then you have the response. At first, there's agreement on the severity of the issue, acknowledging the rise in deaths. But when pressed on specifics, like the 89 figure, there's hesitation. That hesitation becomes more significant when placed next to earlier skepticism about vaccines. Because now, in a position of authority, the same figure is approving vaccines, funding their development, and stating that decisions are being guided by science. That contrast is the core tension of this entire moment. The senator isn't just asking about policy, he's questioning consistency. If vaccines are now being approved and promoted, does that represent a genuine alignment with scientific consensus, or is it a shift driven by the demands of leadership? And that question matters, because public trust in health institutions doesn't just come from what officials say today. It comes from whether their positions feel stable, credible, and grounded over time. Another key moment comes when the conversation expands beyond flu into measles and broader public health trends. The U.S. once led in eliminating measles, largely due to high vaccination rates. Now, rising cases are being discussed alongside misinformation. And that's where the stakes become even clearer. This isn't just about one disease or one statistic. It's about how messaging from leadership can influence behavior across an entire population. When misinformation spreads, vaccination rates drop. When vaccination rates drop, outbreaks rise. And when outbreaks rise, the consequences show up in real numbers: hospitalizations, deaths, and strained healthcare systems. That chain reaction is exactly what's being highlighted here. What makes this exchange powerful is that it's not loud or chaotic. It's methodical. The pressure builds through facts, comparisons, and direct questions. And by the end, there's a clear push. If the position has changed, then it needs to be communicated clearly and consistently to the public. Because mixed signals at the top don't just stay at the top, they ripple outward. So the takeaway is simple but serious. Leadership in public health isn't just about making decisions. It's about clarity, consistency, and credibility. When those align, trust follows. When they don't, confusion fills the gap. Now the question shifts to you. Do you think this exchange shows a genuine shift towards science-based policy, or does it raise more questions about consistency and trust? Let me know in the comments. If you found this breakdown useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more sharp political analysis.